Hello and welcome. It's your boy Hardcorn, and today we're going to review and analyze Asagi Igawa in the game Action Taimanin. We'll be going in depth on her skills and the synergy they bring, along with support her setup and theory. Let's start with a little history on her. Asagi is the head mistress of Gosha Academy. She's strong, she's dexterous, and she can move real fast with her hawk art to strike down enemies, but can't use it very often. That's about it on her, and obviously there's more, but it gets a little complicated. Asagi is one of the starting three girls. She's the katana user, and is also essentially the strength choice for her simple moveset and hard, medium speed hits. You just want to go unga bunga gorilla mode, man? You pick her. Something to note is that a good way of telling how a character will perform and what route to start building them on is looking at their costumes. Asagi's costumes build heavily towards her HP and critting, so the goal is to get Asagi's ability to crit up, and when she crits, to make said hits hurt. A simple task on paper, but it requires a lot of work and resources to accomplish. Magatamas are very important, as they provide stat boosts alongside passive type-based damage through the polishing system. Asagi wants to do big hits, so it's beneficial to give her Magatamas that will supplement that, like the attack and crit ones. On her crit Magatamas, the goal is to look for two types of things: critical hit rate and critical damage, which of course is interspersed with other types of benefits in the polishing pool. So it's a chance to get those two specific types and a further chance to get a good roll on it. Magatamas, really on anyone, are just tacked on boosts, so you do just that and tack them onto your weapons. You do so to make farming and completing the mission that little bit easier. However, the real meat is in supporters and skills. Skills on any of the characters are important, as they have buffs and debuffs required for making big hits or doing meaningful damage in those windows. And that's just offensively. Defensively, skills could turn what a bad situation was into a favorable one. Asagi has the most prominent example of this with her Kojinka ability. It states that during an extreme dodge, she enters into the rupture of super speed and reduces all enemies' movement speed for 4 seconds. It's witch time from Bayonetta with some nifty buffs, and depending on your build, so if you've got 2 green supporters, it increases your movement speed by 20%, 2 blue is increased particle charge by 3% over time, and 2 reds is increased duration by 50%. This skill is incredibly powerful and is one of the game's strongest defensive options outside of invincibility supporters, and it's all on a 9-second cooldown, and you can reduce that even more with upgrading your skill training. The ability to slow all enemies on screen, regardless of size, is great to get out of an unfavorable position and start doing some serious damage. Many times I've found myself trying to milk Kojinka to occur due to the way I have things set up on her, and also so that I could burst down a larger enemy during the slowdown phase. Its simplicity and activation also means that you can activate it when you don't want it to, and then you're out of it for a short time, like when you're trying to dodge a hail of bullets or something. So missing that perfect Kojinka could mean the difference in passing the mission, or kiting the enemies until you got a good lineup, or having to try again because you died. Not to mention that Asagi's 20% movement speed bonus, that applies to her attacks as well. So she's doing even more damage during that duration. I've found that Asagi benefits a lot from green supporters. Not only in her skills, but also that many green supporters tend to have the supplementary effects that just bring out the best in certain types of characters. It's almost like they're assisting somehow. Asagi has many skills that benefit heavily into green investment, but I want to look at some of the more important ones, besides Kojinka. Mueka is her teleports behind you attack. Like the description is, she teleports at an invisible speed, closing the gap between enemies. I mean, if she were a dude, she'd get the too edgy treatment, but she narrowly avoids it because booba happens and she's got the confidence to back it up. Mueka is a real investment skill, just like Kojinka, which requires you to have 2 of a singular color in your supporter list to gain any sort of passive benefits besides being a gap closer. 2 greens is increased damage by 10% for 5 seconds, 2 blue is increased crit rate by 10% for 5, and 2 reds is reduced the cooldown by 20%. Each one of these is a wonderful choice, but remember earlier how we want to use the critical benefits and other passives from greens? Let's weigh here. 2 reds reduce cooldown by 20%, and my Asagi already has 24% cooldown reduction. So if I wanted it, I could have a 44% cooldown reduction to Mueka's 6-second cooldown. That puts it down to 3.36 seconds, so you can put yourself in a favorable position every 3.4 seconds just by mashing dodge. That's good, but it's not good enough. 2 blue supporters can give Asagi increased crit rate for 5 seconds on skill usage. Now, don't forget that we've got 24% cooldown reduction already through skill training, so that puts the skill's cooldown to 4.5 seconds. That means you can have a nearly permanent buff to your crit rate, and your uptime is through the roof. However, you're still running 2 blue supporters on essentially what is a green character. Just calling it how I see it, folks. Mueka Green increases damage by 10% on activation. It's a meaningful steroid on a very short cooldown that you can have nearly up all the time. Now here's the kicker with it. It's a gap closer and also a follow-up tool. I found myself activating Kojinka on a boss, then I'll go activate Mueka for the buffs, then I'll start attacking and at the same time pop a supporter for a nice hot damage phase. It's so good that you can save the walk, get buffed, and do big damage. Remember the double green supporters on Kojinka? It's starting to line up now, isn't it? Of course you can't discuss Asagi's skills without looking into her Taimanin art. Why? It's a flat out upgrade to her attack string and should not be passed up. Taimanin arts on all characters rely on having 3 supporters of any type set in the supporter slots. It is inevitable you're going to fill all 3 slots, so your Taimanin art will always have its full capability at all times, regardless of build. Asagi's Taimanin art has her increased damage by 10% at 1 supporter, another 20% at 2, and particle charge gain increased by 50% at 3. Her Taimanin art speeds up her strikes as well, so it's truly a must-have, because your skills aren't up all the time, so why not increase your other means of defending yourself? Those previous would be what I consider her core skills. All her other ones end up being situational, and it's for a good reason. We'll start with Hirenka. Hirenka uses a set 1 of all 3 colors to gain maximum effect. It's the first skill she can unlock and is really there to teach you about setting supporters, how hold and repeat skills work, and the various effects they can have. It's a general purpose starter skill, and on the base level it comes on a 12-second cooldown, so it's a fairly long time to see that window open for it, all for a generally mediocre benefit. Mueka activates by dodging and then immediately hitting the attack button, causing her to warp right to the nearest enemy and do damage. It's Mueka, but instead of buffing herself, she applies very potent debuffs at a significant cost of 3 colors to gain a singular effect. 13 seconds is quite long for such a skill, but I found use with it in blues to soften up a big enemy. Rakusenka is another warp attack. Asagi flies into the air and plunges her sword down for a big AoE attack. It's a wonderful tool for busting up crowds. Rakusenka is modifiable too, if you want to have a certain amount of blues in your build. Blues are a defensive or recovery type supporter, and this is Asagi's best healing skill when she's got 2 blues equipped. She'll restore 5% of this attack's given damage. Now if that attack goes and does say 7,000 damage, you're only going to get 350 health out of that. And my Asagi right now facing such powerful threats has 12,000 health, a pittance, and it wouldn't even recover a hit from a trash mob, which is why you go then for 3 blues on Rakusenka, and it makes the crit damage from this attack increase by 250%. That's absolutely huge, and if you built Asagi's critting, it's got a solid chance to happen. Say a Rakusenka critting for 150,000 happens. You'll get a nice 7,500 HP out of it with that skill's heal, and that's well over halfway on my Asagi's health, so she's ready to trade hits and get some bars off. Nowadays 150,000 is doable. At one point it wasn't on global, but things have really changed for them. Oh, and it's set 1 blue to make the attack warp. But another thing to note is that attacks that send characters into the air, they can be cancelled by enemy damage, and that also starts taking the cooldown. So setups to make sure you're not a sitting duck during startup are important. Satsujinko attacks with holding down the attack button, releasing, and then Asagi goes to the nearest enemy and keeps slashing until the enemy dies or she runs out of hits, whichever comes first. This is similar to one of Sakura's skills, but also not as effective. Specific color mains activate this skill's passives, and they're not really anything to write home about. It's all in all a very mediocre skill. Renjinka is the premier green build damaging skill. It rewards investment and gives some of the best returns you could ask for. It's got fast hits, many hits, damage reduction, and it finishes with an AoE that has knockdown and knockback. This is the skill you set up for using Kojinka and get a massive DPS window going to get a boss into groggy, or to take out a beefed up mob before they can get a status inflicted on you. 1 green reduces damage taken during the attack, 2 greens are 5 more thrusts, and 3 greens increase the damage by 150%. It gives plenty of chances to do regular big damage, and also meaty fat back crits. However, thanks to how wonky it is to do the skill sometimes, you'll input early or be too far away, and then you miss out entirely on the thrusting part. And then you just do the 360 spin and you look like an idiot, since now you're out 16 seconds and possibly in danger, since you lean too hard on getting that DPS in. I've been there many a time, which is why I try to avoid skills like Kojinka on all my characters, no matter how good it is. Though occasionally I still use it, but for my general purposes I get alright, and most importantly, reliable results with Mueka, the Taimanin art, and Kojinka. Satsujinko is a very nice skill to break up crowds. By holding the attack button down until charged, Asagi can then fire off clones that do damage to enemies in the immediate area. And then this attack will knock down small enemies and then will stagger some bigger ones. And it'll really get you out of a tight spot. With 1 red supporter, she gets 10% faster movement speed for 10 seconds, 2 reds is another copy that goes to attack, and then 3 reds is increase the critical rate by 50%. This is all well and good on paper. A thing to note is that this attack is considered ranged. It's their only ranged attack. So which means if your supporters boost melee, and they really should on Asagi, having a ranged attack like Satsujinko could only be for a defensive reason, or you don't have enough crit built up on her, and you gotta run 3 reds to do it. But if you don't even run all 3, you miss out on the crit boost, and all you'll be left with either is the movement speed increase, or just getting an additional copy, and it's a speed increase that arguably takes more to gain than just doing a simple Kojinka. While I haven't gotten to 81 with Asagi yet to see how her currently final skill acts, personally I'm not too impressed on the sort of face value. It feels like another Satsujinko, and besides, this is a review of her in a 1 to 75 cents, so it will be disregarded for now. To conclude on Asagi, she's a very basic character who's there to get you started and do enough work with a mediocre amount of effort so that you can try to get through the story with minimal resistance and begin your farming. She's incredibly straightforward, almost to a fault, and you don't really need to plan too hard with her, on usage at least, outside of far-fetched endgame quests. For the casual and start of the game though, she's a very solid pick. It's easy to stick with her and you'll clear everything. She's truly a mule that comes to work and will continue working for you along until the day she dies or is just flat out surpassed in every aspect and at a lower cost. Obviously her coming out as a day 1 release character, she's bound to be power crept, but alongside that, she's also a generalist, so more specific tasks she'll find difficulty in or just flat out can't do them due to the lack of specialization. Yes, she can specialize in crits, but so can others, and they do it way better than she can. But at the end of the day though, she'll still be there, and she'll keep marching forward to help complete your tasks, and I can't blame a girl for trying. Oh lord, it wasn't that something. First real deal review, and all it took was the holiday weekend to do, and I sure learned a lot at the same time. Thanks for coming on out and learning with your boy Hardcorn. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, leave a comment too, because I love to hear from you guys and maybe get some ideas from where to go next. And as always, I'll see you next time.